Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all, for all of you. We've met each other several times virtually, but not physically yet, many of you. I want to start out with Seth. So, on a positive note, what needs we had a very animated conversation yesterday. What needs to happen in order to accelerate a sustainable future?
I think the most important thing that is the only thing that is holding back, look, there's all aspects of sustainability in terms of water, in terms of other resources. I'm very energy focused, although we do have a water company as well. In my mind, there's one sector that we need to address, and that's on these people, okay? We know how to do solar. We don't invent solar panels, and we don't build them. We buy, like everyone else, you buy them from China. Ultimately, you bring them over. What needs to happen is to fix the financing impediment, particularly in this region. We need a financial infrastructure that will facilitate not just big utility scale, but distributed generation, which is what we do. So rooftop solar for big companies, we desperately need a financial infrastructure to serve this, because it is completely lacking at the moment. In the US and Europe, we have the financial architecture, but for DG, distributed generation, in emerging markets, there is no financial architecture to serve this in an efficient manner.
Okay, so financing is key. But before we get to the financing, is that the case, Cristian, with real estate? Do you see that financing is an impediment for building sustainability into your real estate projects, or is that not a structural issue?
So first of all, thank you to Volcano Summit for the invitation, and it's great to be here with you in this panel. So yeah, 100%. Financing is key in real without the sustainability component, and with the sustainability component, 10x. Now, the key thing is not only, I understand the bank side of things. ¿Aló? Ya ahora sí. Gracias. I understand the bank. ¿Aló? Ya. I guess we're on now. So I understand the bank side of things and the financing side of things, because it's this chicken or an egg thing. If you don't have enough market, if you don't have enough depth, then creating the financial vehicles, creating the financial structure and pipeline is very difficult for the banks. Indifferent if they're a development bank or a traditional commercial bank. So real estate has the exact same issue. What is happening now is that the client is changing, because the client is forcing the financial institutions, the companies, everybody to change. And that's the big shift that we've seen in the last couple of years, I would say 5 years, that is really moving the needle. It's getting family offices to invest, it's getting the bigger corporations to really shift their structure, and then as the IDBs of the world start trickling down money through the financial institutions with special credits or special conditions for green finance, et cetera, it's slowly opening up. But the key thing for me is that the client changed and requires it, and then that the financial system creates that platform for that deployment of capital. And I think those two things are meeting in a context where technology is finally generating solar panels, water, et cetera, at a cost-efficient basis that allows a successful economic structure and return.
Okay, good. Now we're going to go to the banks. So let's start with Banco Neutral, since it's one of the major financial institutions in Central America. What is the bank doing, and let's be specific about projects to unclog the financing necessary to what Seth is saying to get an acceleration to sustainability?
Thank you, Philip. Before we start talking about Banco Industrial, I think we have to address the situation here in Guatemala in terms of sustainable finance. First, Guatemala hasn't had many years of working in these terms. So I think we are starting and we are advancing, and that's great. And second of all, we still don't have any regulation in these terms, so it is important to address, because if we don't have any regulation, that doesn't encourage, drives the transformation of the market. So it is important to mention that. But it is also important to mention the progress that entities are making. We have signed Guatemala Sustainable Finance Protocol. I think that is a great step forward in these terms. And I think we are the only bank that has a sustainability policy. So we are making progress, but we are still moving really slow. In Banco Industrial, we have an ESG integration, so we are moving forward in developing products and services that diligently considers environmental, social, and corporate governance. We have products that financing renewable energy, construction, hybrid and electric vehicles. But it is, we were talking in our conversation previous this panel, the importance of rates and terms and years, and we are working on that. First of all, as banks, we have to talk the inflation that we are living right now, it is a great problem. The Fed has increased their rates from 0.25% to 5.5%, and this really affects us, and it is really important to talk about it and to put it in the table. So we are trying to work with our clients and give benefits such as terms and years of payment grace. And that's the way we are trying to move forward until we can get more rates and better situation for our clients. Yeah.
Maybe this is a good time for Ignez to step in, because I think organizations like the BID, the Inter-American Development Bank, they lend to the big banks. And I'm a beneficiary of solar panel acquisition, where we transferred all our energy to solar, and it was thanks to a multilateral institution, a big financing institution that provided the guarantee to a local bank so that I could buy solar panels at an attractive rate. So is that something that the BID will be expanding on a project basis, getting more financing so that the local banks can take these kind of risks for sustainable energy projects, for instance?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Good morning. Buenos días a todos. Yes, well, IDB has set itself to be one of the leading institutions in the region financing sustainability. And we have done in the past years a lot. We have been quite aggressive, especially in terms of climate change and sustainability, and we know that there's more to be done. And in fact, this year we took a very big commitment, because from January we decided that all the projects that we financed that above $3 million, it doesn't matter if it's in the private or in the public sectors, they need to be Paris aligned. Now, what does that mean? It means that they need to contribute to decarbonization, and they need to contribute to climate resilience. Now, we know that's not easy, right? It sounds easier to say than to do, and we have been working very hard to mobilize additional resources to support our clients, not only in the public sector, but in the private sector, to be able to do this transition, help them to incorporate more climate smart technology and strategies in their business. And I want to say, Seth is right. I mean, the challenges that we face are huge, and the financial gap is very big. Now, to be able to close this financial gap, institutions like ours and other financial institutions, we need to be more ambitious. And we need to be able to take more risk, but we need to have the structures that allow us to do that. And I can say that right now, IDB is going through a change into institutional strategy, and changing the business models of Bid Invest and Bid Lab to be able to do just that. So we hope we can be more effective. We hope we can increase our scale.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Let's have Seth.
Sorry, I have to jump in here. I do want to say that any ire, irritation that I express towards BID and the systemic, existing financial system is not directed at these lovely people, and this is a great summit. But I think that, frankly, this is a misunderstanding. Part of my issue is it's not just that the MDBs, I think, actually don't play the game that well. It's that they're playing the wrong game. I'm sorry, I fundamentally disagree with this as a stance. The job is not to be deploying capital per se. What you need to be doing is building a bridge to bankability. Ultimately, I shouldn't be dealing with BID. I shouldn't be dealing with DFC, none of the MDBs. I should be dealing with Citibank or Scotiabank or commercial banks here who have an existing financial... And the problem is that they're not there. The challenge for the banks is infrastructure itself is becoming distributed. There's a massive international financial architecture to finance infrastructure. Okay, the problem is when banks hear infrastructure, they think $300 million plus ticket sizes, okay? That's fine. If I want to build a $300 million solar plant in the middle of the utility scale, I can get financing, no problem. If I want to do $301 million projects, even if all of those is with Coca-Cola and Cargill, blue chip names in safe, boring countries like Costa Rica, Panama, USD contracts, there's no one to talk to. I actually think your job should not be to be doing individual deals with companies and deploying that way. It's to building the bridge to bankability so that you can get out of the way, because this is not some prospective technology. There's millions of solar projects.
Yeah. Let me just jump in. So if there's $301 million loan possibilities and the financing has a good chance of being paid back because they're sustainable projects, why is there no banks willing to step in to take those loans?
Because infrastructure, banks have. My background, I was on Wall Street and as an MD at Citi for a long time. Banks are, in departments. There's infrastructure bankers, and they look for there are characteristics of their projects. The problem is those characteristics are changing. Infrastructure, whether it's in energy, and it's going to happen in water too. Okay, we do water generation on site. Water infrastructure is changing too, and it's going to happen across the board. The infrastructure is becoming distributed. You have solar panels on the house, on the top of your house or factory, as opposed to and a battery in the garage, as opposed to having one massive power plant. Yeah. And there is no financial architecture to facilitate this. And doing bespoke deals is great for the company that gets the deal. We're a winner. We've got financing, okay? But that's actually not the solution that the sector needs.
Do you see that in real estate, Cristian, for projects that are sustainable in terms of LEED? You have all the certifications for your big real estate projects. Is financing an issue?
Not in that perspective. And I think real estate is very linear, and it all starts with the end user, again. So Costa Rica, for example, is a country that has a lot of foreign direct investment. Companies come in and say, if you're not LEED or EDGE certified, I can't be your tenant. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that changed the market. The other thing is that in that perspective, it's grade A clients coming in and creating in a massive scale a demand that then allows, going back to my previous point, the banks to actually create product that can be addressed at a certain volume that is viable. So I think that, there's definitely a big change in that. I do agree with Seth that the key is really how do you trickle down the money in a more efficient way. And I think part of what IDB is doing is actually creating some of those bigger pockets, and there's a long way to go, but they're fairly alone, with IFC and maybe a couple others.
Would it be fair to say that the consumer's already there? They're already looking for it,
yeah.
and so we need the banks to catch up to the consumer, which is
Yeah.
already willing to invest.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
so it looks
consumer
like
demands it. Yeah.
Okay, so in the meantime, it looks like funds are closing the gap for financing. Is that what's happening as the banks get online? Are funds being created for meeting the demand?
When we're talking about whatever our targets are, whatever date,
This is so everyone stays awake.
we need to deploy
That's a courtesy of the bank.
We are, as a world, if you look at what the IEA's reports, if we're going to go net zero, bring down carbon emissions, we have to deploy trillions of dollars over the next couple of decades. Not billions, trillions of dollars. And again, real estate, it hasn't changed fundamentally. It's not like, you know, if you're building a shopping mall now, it needs to be green, whatever. It's the same as building a shopping mall. Fine. That financial architecture is there. On energy, and I think we will get there in water, it is fundamentally changing the entire nature of the industry. And the gap is, to be honest, I don't see it closing. I see it closing in Europe and the US. Commercial banks are starting to be there. But in emerging markets, and particularly here in Central America, where you have some of the highest power prices in the world and unreliable energy systems, there's a massive financial gap. And I don't see the systematic solutions evolving so far. I'm sorry, I would love to.
Yeah. Go ahead, Cristian.
Careful. There is one thing that is changing, and we discussed this briefly, and it's the concept of natural capital.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring it up is because about 4 or 5 years ago, the SEC actually recognized natural capital as an asset class. That means I can have carbon credits in my balance sheet, okay? Yeah. So if I'm a bank, or if I'm any type of financial institution, yes, the business is important, but the sponsor is the most important thing, right? So if all of a sudden I'm a company that I have X amount of money in natural capital that I can incorporate into my balance sheet, become stronger, it becomes a lot more viable to create financing. Just to put that quickly into perspective, Biofin and Minai and a couple other entities measured the natural capital of Costa Rica. And they measured how much ecosystem services they are developing per year. And they measured about 14.7 billion a year. That's 25% of our GDP, okay? So if we're able to monetize that, that's a chunk of money. If you're able to just include that in your balance sheet, that's a chunk of money. The net present value of all our natural capital is estimated to be above $800 billion. So when you look at it that way, there's a huge asset class that can become, and we've dealt with it with IDB, and in IDB Invest particularly, they do recognize that value. It is there, where there's actually a project working on publicly traded company or the first IPO on natural capital. And I think that's really evolving.
That's an excellent point. So my company, Ecofiltro, sells large amounts of carbon offsets every year. And it's a lot of money that's out there that I want everyone to understand that is available. So, we've built a large factory, millions of dollars, and we have no debt. Sorry, banks, we're not a good client. But because we've been able to monetize the carbon offset. And I think here in Central America, a lot of people don't know that there's a massive amount of money available if you're doing something that is restoring, in our case, we're eliminating the need to boil water. So we have 550,000 families that don't burn 20 pounds of firewood a day, which turns into a large amount of money. And so all our CapEx is funded. So how do we get more companies to take advantage of that? Is there a marketing issue or we need to educate the market? How do we get more people to understand that there's so much opportunity available in carbon financing?
So there's two things I would suggest, or one thing I would suggest: Google ecosystem services and natural capital. That's the first thing, so that people can understand what that is, because ecosystem services is not only carbon credits, it's also a plant that treats water differently, creates an ecosystem service. So basically all of those benefits today can be quantified, valued, and then monetized in some way. Now, to your point, that last part of monetized in some way is not really true. It's very difficult to monetize a lot of the ecosystem services. There's very few standards. Carbon credits have probably the longest track record in terms of measuring and monetizing them. They got hit, in the past couple of months quite a bit, but there is a huge market out there of people trying to fix things up. We were recently, last year at IFC with Vivek Patek, who's the global head of climate, and their main mission is how can we create the market? So the market happens when you have volume, okay? So my suggestion would be start adding that up, start working from the private sector as a group, as a sector, to quantify that, and then go look for the IFCs, IDBs of the world and create the market. But one thing that has leapfrog in that sense, if you look at NASDAQ and the Rio de Janeiro Bolsa de Cambio or stock exchange, they actually created a market within the Rio de Janeiro Stock Exchange where you can go directly and sell your carbon credits, directly and sell your ecosystem services. So it's really just creating those big leapfrogging structural gaps, similar to what you're mentioning in banks, to create the pricing and to create the marketplace.
But it has to be led by the private sector, you're saying?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be financed
Yeah.
by them.
Yeah.
They can help,
Yeah.
but it has to be led by the private sector, hands down.
All right. We only have 5 minutes left. So just, I think we've talked enough about energy and sustainability. I want to know, just briefly, 1 minute, what are each of you doing in your organization that is a sustainability strategy? So we'll start with Seth.
So whenever we talk to MDBs and they want to see the various criteria in line with the development goals, I run a solar company and a water company. Okay, everything we do is sustainable, like by definition. I don't have a sideline in arms manufacturing. All we do is solar and water efficiency, generation and production. So we don't do anything else.
Okay. So your model is the sustainability.
We don't do anything else.
Yeah. Maria Jose?
Okay, we as a bank, we have to talk about sustainability, just not for our clients, but 360, right? So first of all, we use efficiently our resources management to reduce our ecological footprint, and that is really important. I already talked about our green products, so that will not. The risk management, also it is important to talk. And something I think here in Guatemala is very important, because inclusion and financial education. We have to understand our country and the environment we live, and approximately 65% of our people is unbanked, and we must commit in these terms, since having access to money is really directly related to reduced poverty rates. Yep. So we have to think about that also. That's also sustainability, and we have to put that into the table also. So thank you.
Ignez?
I want that one.
That other one explodes.
Yes, I'm afraid, but it's getting interesting. It's getting interesting. Yes. So we actually are doing so many things, but if I had to pick one, which I think it has breakthrough in the past years, is how IDB Invest, which is our private arm, it's helping to structure sustainability bonds. We have helped to structure over 36 bonds over the last few years. We have helped most countries to structure their first bond. We are very happy because we're very close to getting Guatemala to issue the first one in the private sector. And we also have helped to structure most of the thematics bonds, the first ones, blue and gender in the region. So that is thinking in a different way.
Yeah, that's good.
On our end, we're doing three things. One, evangelizing as much as we can. Talking about it, trying to show that the numbers are there, that the facts are there, that the structure's there. So that's the first thing we're doing, creating awareness. Two, we're focused on net positive real estate. Net positive real estate, new projects that we work on, that we develop, we're trying to make them net positive. Existing projects, how can we refurbish them? How can we do anything real estate related to take them to a net positive reality? That would be my dream, to have a Central American region that is net positive, because real estate is such a heavy burden in that particular sense. And then lastly, very specifically, we've partnered with a couple of firms to create high-end conservation lodges. So we're starting a couple of lodges in Costa Rica initially. The first 3 are in 10,000 hectares. And what we're doing with them is we've created a structure where 20% of the operating cash flow actually goes to conservation and regeneration. And by the way, our funding partner for that is IDB Invest. So we're very happy with IDB Invest. But those are the three things we're really focused on.
Good.
Watch out, Seth. We have many clients here.
Thanks to all of you. I think what I'm hearing is that the consumers change. The consumer is looking for sustainability. And this sustainability really has to be led by the private sector. So we need to educate more, get the private sector together. and then the public will follow, and we'll reach the goals we all want to reach together. Thank you very much.
Before we end, we will just take 5 minutes because I know we all want to know more about this information. So I have 5 minutes if anyone from the audience has a specific question that they would like to ask one of our panelists. Right? You can grab the mic.
How do you see the participation of the NGOs in those strategies that you share with us?
Directed to anyone specifically? To anyone who can or wants to answer.
Well, see, part of the problem is when I talk about creating a financial infrastructure to service distributed infrastructure in emerging markets, we're talking about this is sophisticated. To be honest, this is not the realm of NGOs. We could do with some NGOs shouting at the banks, but what we really need is the asshole bankers. Okay, what I really need is what we really need is a serious, obnoxious banker who say, get this deal done or we don't get paid. Because this is about deploying capital. So I think the NGOs can maybe be useful on the advocacy, saying make it happen, but ultimately what we need are the asshole bankers to get involved to make this happen. This is a real business. We need trillions of dollars.
We need
I
the
would say
beep. The beep isn't working for the bad words.
Yeah, I would say one thing. NGOs in our world are fundamental because they create the science.
Yeah.
And everything in this industry derives from the science. If the science not there, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
It's all talk.
Yeah.
So for me, NGOs are fundamental. We've, in the large business, we've actually partnered with NGOs so that they can give us the science and we don't go and do dumb stuff.
Yeah.
So the data-driven approach comes a lot from them.
Yeah, and I would like to say that Ecofiltro uses NGOs a lot. We work together. I think you do a lot in educating communities so that we can come in with a sustainable business strategy. So the education part is key for NGOs.
Thank you very much. We still have time. Anyone else has another question they would like to ask? The lady over there with the scarf on her head.
Hi, I'm not sure if I missed. Here? No,
Yay,
no.
good.
I come from private sector, and we have a packaging company, and we also have a real estate company. So we were wondering if we really need to have an approach, direct approach for IDB, so we can get a grant or something. We have been funded for other activities, for innovation especially, but not for decarbonization, not for net zero. We have a recycling plant, so we're doing that by ourselves. But now that we're expanding, we're in El Salvador. So now that we're expanding, is there a chance that we can get in contact with you guys and see if we can just expand and see other areas, or even Guatemala, for example, to create these spaces from private sector to the communities?
Yes, absolutely. And there's something I didn't mention, but I think maybe with this crowd, most of you know that we have a window in the bank that's called IDB Lab or BID Lab, right?
Yeah, bueno.
That focus on helping those kind of companies to be able to, in a way, develop projects, but also scale up. So if you have the numbers, we can help you scale up. And if you need big scale, and then we can bring BID Invest. So come to talk to me. Yeah.
Perfect. So that's about it. Please, thank you very much for all the knowledge. Please give them an applause.
Thank you.